split motion Shakir. Allen back to throw. Allen airing it out. Allen picked off by Bullock. It's over. The Texans are going to do it. There's a flag down in the secondary. What is this? It's against the Bills. The Texans pull it off. They're going to knock off Buffalo tonight.
Oh, for those who are fans of a pass-happy NFL, who like points on the scoreboard, the Houston Texans have a message for you. And that message is defense can be fun too. The Texans take down the Buffalo Bills on Thursday Night Football, 23-19 in a thrilling contest. I'm Nick Shook, sitting in for Greg Rosenthal and joined by my favorite, the superstar herself, Jourdan Rodrigue. Jourdan, what a game.
We got a Monsters Inc. 23-19. 23-19. I'm so excited. I was telling Patrick and Greg that this was going to happen all season. We were going to get a score. Greg Rosenthal has never seen Monsters Inc. I feel the fans need to pressure him. The listeners need to pressure him. He must now watch it as penance for not believing in the Houston Texans like we were talking about, Nick, all week with this defense. This game was so, so fun. If you love defense, if you love weirdness, if you love games that get really, really crazy with slow periods in between and flurries of competence, it was so much fun all around. This was amazing.
Oh, flurries of competence. What a way to describe the Houston Texans offense tonight. I mean, it didn't start with competence necessarily because they ended up in a goal-to-go situation and settled for 3. But they did find some openings, and they capitalized late in this game. And I think that's probably where we should start, because earlier in this game, the Bills put together your typical touchdown drive. It ends up in a long James Cook touchdown run. Pretty status quo. But the Texans claw their way back into this game. And really where things turned is just before halftime, when they force a turnover and they cover 75 yards. And they finish it. And this is a 6-play drive, mind you. This is a 2-minute drill executed to perfection by none other than the man himself, Davis Mills. And when it looks like they're going to come up short again on the goal line, instead, Mills finds Jaden Higgins for a touchdown. And suddenly, the Texans have a 20-16 lead going into halftime. And if you listen to the final score, it's 23-19, which tells the rest of the story because there weren't that many points in the second half, thanks to this fantastic Houston Texans defense. Jourdan, I know that you love watching great defenses play, and we got one tonight.
Yeah, this was so much fun. You know, to that point when the Texans started putting together actual drives on offense, Davis Mills had only completed his second pass of the game with like 9.5 minutes left in the second half, which tells you we say flurries of competence. We mean flurries of competence because in the last 3 minutes-ish of the second quarter, the Texans scored 17 points and took a 20-16 lead. And from there, their defense went to work. Nick, the Texans' defensive line sacked Josh Allen 8 times tonight. That is, I believe, a career high for Josh Allen. Kalen Bullock, who iced the game, that was his second interception. And he also forced a fumble. I mean, this pressure that the Texans' defense got didn't just alter the game. And obviously the Russian coverage was so complimentary because Josh Allen turned the ball over pretty uncharacteristically, other than the fact that he was being pressured so voraciously from play to play. The pressure was coming from the outside. It was coming from the inside. It was such a smart sequencing of design and tenacity. And these defensive linemen, they were getting their arms free of the offensive linemen. They were batting Josh Allen's arm all the time to force him to tuck and pull the ball so he didn't want to make the throws. And the secondary and the linebackers were swarming behind it. It was artful defense. And I have to say, this defense is magnificent. So often during this game, Nick, I found myself thinking, this Texans defense is truly beautiful to watch. It is magnificent. If only they had an offense. And over again, you just kept thinking this because they kept giving the Bills chances to come back into this. But this defense, they have Josh Allen's number. He plays his worst football against the Houston Texans defense.
Yeah. Although I do think back to that one time when he took off for a run early in his career and bloodied up his arm. That was also in Houston, but that was years ago. That was a different Josh Allen. There's so many topics that you could drill down on within this defensive performance. Like, you could talk about the fact that Josh consistently had nowhere to go. And the reason that he had nowhere to go wasn't just the pressure. It was also the way that Houston played coverage. Now, Next Gen Stats has it pretty even. There's actually more zone than man, but in the second half especially, all I saw was one safety up high, man coverage across the board. And the Bills are trying to run crossers and everything else. They ran mesh a couple of times, and the Texans properly picked it up, even though usually their cause is traffic that loses a defender. No problem for the Texans. And the easy layups that Allen is so used to getting were not there. So that was the first part. He had no quick decisions until that final drive when the Texans were playing a little softer. The other part of it was, it's not just the usual suspects in pass rushing. And yes, of course, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, they definitely did their part. Will Anderson with 2.5 sacks, Danielle Hunter with 2. But there were other players that came up in key spots throughout this game where Allen might escape the pocket to the right. And there's Henry To'oTo'o to meet him behind the line of scrimmage for a sack. He wasn't the only one. There was a number of other guys. Tim Settle getting a sack up the middle. What it was Allen trying to navigate the pocket, looking for exit routes. And every time he thought he found one, there was a Texans defender. It was an incredible display of discipline, both on the back end and in the pass rush. And it neutralized the Bills offense that folks probably thought were going to put up a lot of points. They put up, 42, 44 last week? Nope, 19 today. Because when you run into a defense that has talent at all three levels, and especially a safety in Kalen Bullock, who had a hell of a night, and you have a defense that plays disciplined football, is well coached, then it's going to make everything real difficult for you. And like you said, if the Texans had an offense, this would be a legit Super Bowl contender, because this defense is elite. It's special. It's one that we're going to remember for a while.
Yeah, I'm curious if you saw the same thing as me too, Nick, because it was like when this group was pass rushing, and when I say that, it's not just their front that does it. I know that sometimes the broadcast in the pregame had some fun with D'Amico Ryans and his swarm catchphrase, and what does it mean? And I'm like, watch the game. That's what it means. Because it was because what they were doing as a collective. This wasn't just the front, interior, and exterior, which was amazing, but also every single layer. They were almost reading the inverse of Josh Allen's own reads. When Josh Allen was looking for places to go, it's like they were also looking for the same lanes to either run or to throw that Josh Allen himself was looking at. That is incredible film study. That is instinctive football. That is smart scheme. That from Matt Burke, the defensive coordinator, that is also just a tenacious, exquisitely talented group of players that even when things got so crazy at the end, Nick, so crazy at the end, again, in one of these Texans games, and you just had confidence that they were going to make a goal line stand, even when we saw one of the most unbelievable plays I think we've seen in a game all season.
Yeah, when Houston was kind of, I wouldn't say playing with their food, but allowing the Bills to stay in the game in the fourth quarter, I thought, oh no, this is going to be how heartbreak happens. And when they cut it to a 4-point lead, I thought, oh no, here comes the heartbreak. But that defense gives you the confidence as a viewer, and if you're a Texans fan, that if they're going to lose, they're going to make it really difficult for the other team to break their hearts. Like, you're not just going to get a free shot at them. You're going to have to really work for it. And the Bills were working for it. And their only lifeline in the passing game, especially in the fourth quarter, was finding Khalil Shakir. Mm-hmm. You know, you had no Dalton Kincaid out there. Keon Coleman inactive for a second straight week. So his options, Josh Allen's options, are limited. And it ended up being throw it to Shakir in the flat and a little bit of open space and make guys miss. And he did a lot down the right sideline in that fourth quarter, which is really what put them in a position to potentially win this game. But ultimately, it was the same things that we just talked about. Allen being under duress often, really just never feeling comfortable in the pocket. And a player like Kalen Bullock stepping in to make the game-sealing interception that we listened to. Just a phenomenal play, but not the only play and not the only contribution from a defender on the Texans' defense. We think about Azeez Al-Shire. Like, this guy has a bit of a reputation after what he did to Trevor Lawrence last year, right? He plays hard. He plays a million miles an hour. He hits players hard. And he brought that to the field tonight to the point where I think there was a fumble at one point, and an offensive lineman picked it up. I think it was one of the tackles, and he went to tackle him just to make sure that he was down. And you see him stand up and like pat his helmet like, hey, man, I just had to make sure you were tackled. Well, that was him being peaceful, extending an olive branch. He was not peaceful for most of this game. He tips a pass early in this game that ends up in the arms of Kalen Bullock for the first interception that really started to swing the game in their favor. It was another example of how they're not just their stars. They're not just Derek Stingley. They are a full unit that comes through in the biggest spots. But you're right. One of the craziest plays we've seen all season on that final drive, it's 4th and 27. I know there's an old play in Eagles lore that Donovan McNabb converted, but this one stands right up there, even though it's not in the playoffs. It's a hook and lateral, hook and ladder. Depending on what your terminology is, it worked regardless. It caught the Texans, who were playing a bit of a prevent look, playing very soft back toward the line to gain, gave them space underneath to make the play. And of course, Joe Brady digs into the bag of tricks and calls it at the perfect time, and it catches the outside corner on the right side off guard, opens up another lane for Shakir to make a big gain down the sideline, which it felt like he was doing the entire fourth quarter. And that's really what put us in this position for this game to come down to a final defensive stand. A thrilling play. I have to ask you, Jordan, before we move forward, which term do you use to describe this? Because I've always been confused, or at least conflicted on which one I want to use.
I just say Chris Peterson, Boise
yes,
State.
Boise State.
That's
Let's
what
go.
I say. Yeah. And I posted this too. I was like, Chris Peterson on line 1, because that is one of those plays. I think I'm pretty sure that you and I are the same age as Joe Brady, Nick.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, which is wild to think about. It's a lot of responsibility. But it's like we grew up with that lore, right? Like we grew up knowing, about the Boise State upset and the Fiesta Bowl and the hook and ladder. And I call it the hook and ladder. And I know it's you can go either way, but like it was one of those plays that you run. You really don't want to show that at any other point other than a moment of pure and absolute desperation.
Unless you're Ben Johnson with the Lions last year, but
right.
That was a unique case.
And you just do it whenever you want.
Yeah.
I thought that it was special for Khalil Shakir that he had an opportunity to possibly win the game just days after he and his wife had a baby girl. And so there was all this poetry setting up for this Josh Allen, multiple turnovers and getting hit so much and shaking his hand out because he kept landing on his hand because he was trying to protect the football underneath his body every time he would get hit. And there was just this feeling that you're like, okay, if Josh Allen is going to go into the same kind of God mode we saw last week, then this would be the moment that he does it. But it's an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, and the immovable object wins in this case, the Texans defense. I can't speak highly enough for. You mentioned some of the little details you saw about just how technically sound they are in some of the little moments. Like Danielle Hunter at one point on a sack unclenched his arms from around Josh Allen's legs because his body was getting turned by a lineman who was rolling backwards. And if Danielle Hunter would have still stayed holding on to Josh Allen's legs, he probably would have gotten flagged for a hip drop. And instead, he unclaspes his arms. And the second that Josh Allen's feet are clear of the roll, he claps back on. So it's like those little things that this is like the smartest freaking defense. It's why I picked them. I know it's embarrassing, but because of this offense, but I picked them to be Super Bowl contenders at the beginning of the season because this defense has just this elite professionalism and this athleticism for Will Anderson Jr. to miss the sack on Josh Allen, diving and stretching out the first time, run 51.7 yards, according to Next Gen Stats, to then get to Josh Allen and take him to the turf. That is some Aaron Donald man. And I wrote it out in my notes. I'm not going to make Chris Fabona edit it tonight. But that is some crazy, crazy stuff. And that is what this defense can be. I'm glad they got to show it on primetime. Sure wish they had an offense, but, it's fits and starts, we take what we can get.
Yeah, and the Texans will take what they can get for sure because they're in a process right now where they're trying to climb out of the deficit in the hole that they dug themselves early in this season. And as we got to the fourth quarter of this game tonight, and I contemplated the idea of the Bills coming back and winning, I thought, if the Bills are going to win, it's going to be a culture win, and it's going to be just a red mark on the Texans' resume as a team that has a good defense but isn't good enough to beat teams like this. But now that we watched it conclude in the fashion that it did, I'm almost tempted to say that it's a culture creating or establishing win for these Texans. Because if we back up a little bit, before Houston takes a 20-16 lead into halftime, they had just put up 10 points in a matter of minutes, right? It's 13-9. They had to settle for 3 after the turnover on the goal line. Can't convert all the time. Buffalo gets it right back with a fantastic kick return touchdown by Ray Davis, and one that I want to take a listen to here.
With 1:56 left in the half. Kick is going to go to Davis, who fields it at the 2, out to the 10, 15, coming up the middle, 25, bounces off a tackle, spins, and he's out to the 40, cuts it back 50, he's going to go the distance. Happy birthday, Ray Davis, all the way for a flip into the end zone for a touchdown.
Now that is a massive play that could take the soul from a team that had just clawed its way into the lead. You know, you think, all right, we're playing great defense. We got something out of our offense for once. All the momentum's in our favor. Boom, punch to the gut. Just like that, you're trailing again. And I think at that point, I was settled in for a title contender type of fight, a heavyweight bout for 12 rounds, 4 quarters. Here we go, back and forth. Some weird stuff's happening. Ray Davis runs into his own blocker, and that's what frees him up to take it 97 yards for a touchdown kick return. And yet the Texans weren't really bothered by that. They responded. And that's why I think that, yes, their defense defines their team, but it's the ability to fight back. Yes, you have home field advantage. You're wearing your fancy, sparkly when it comes to the helmet, all red jerseys. You're on primetime. It's a special night. But this is like where this team is, why I'm starting to believe in them. And shout out to Davis Mills for doing a good enough job to move the football with this team. He's come through in the clutch a couple of times now. That comeback win over Jacksonville, that 2-minute drive tonight to put points on the board before halftime. I'm kind of a believer that I like the trajectory of this Texans team because of how they performed in a game like this.
It's super interesting to me. I argue with Greg about this constantly, and we did so even over text tonight, because before he went into the family event that he was going to tonight, Nick, he was texting me about Davis Mills, who he just can't quit. He can't quit Davis Mills. He loves him. And when Davis Mills makes a throw to get the Texans in scoring position again right before halftime, he's like, we are so back. And then it goes dark because he goes into this event, right? And I'm like, Greg, it's spurts, right? It's like he does things in highly productive flashes. He's like the calmest guy ever, and yet his play is like high functioning anxiety personified, because it's like you're just still for most of it, and then all of a sudden you produce like frantically, right? And then you're good. And I think it's a testament, though, because even when he's not producing, and again, they're in the second half, they're just giving the Bills, their possessions are so short, they're just giving the Bills bite after bite after bite after bite at the apple. Davis Mills was calm. He was not rattled. His offensive line, once again, I think this was their 7th different offensive line combination that they entered the game with, the Texans, and their offense has not looked good with CJ Stroud or without CJ Stroud. And, you know, like I mentioned at the top of the show, he didn't complete his second pass until deep into the second quarter. But he stays calm. And I think, as sometimes maybe too calm, Al on the broadcast pointed this out when he was like, man, we haven't seen him like frown or show any emotion at all, good or bad, on his face at any point. And I think that's really what you need for these Texans to climb out of the hole that they had dug themselves, is this calmness. Now, you hope CJ Stroud gets back. It sounds like he's close to making his return to the field, but to have sort of this steadiness in the meantime when you are trying to figure out ways to win games, and this defense is really carrying you through that, like a D'Amico Ryans team will. I do think that it was important for Davis Mills to be this backup quarterback for this team right now.
Yeah, and you know, I think when you have a defense as good as Houston's, it takes a little bit of the pressure off just naturally, because you think, all right, well, the game's not entirely on my shoulders. If I don't convert this third down, the defense is still going to give us a chance, which is the first feather in his cap that he can kind of lean on in this situation. But it's also, I mean, you think back to when he was drafted, he came out of Stanford with very limited college experience, and that was the big knock on him. And then they throw him into the fire, and he gets 2 seasons worth of starting experience with a bad team and doesn't do well. And then they pull the plug and go to CJ Stroud, and we know what happened from there. But it's a testament to how you can develop and grow, even if you're not quite on the field, over the course of an NFL career. He spent the last couple of years behind CJ Stroud, 2.5 seasons on the bench in anonymity, to the point where when he came in for Stroud a couple of weeks ago, folks probably forgot that he was still on the roster. But they know he is now because of the comeback that he led over Jacksonville, because of the way that he's kept this offense competitive, and how he was able to do his job in some of the biggest spots tonight, like on his touchdown pass to Christian Kirk, where they go up tempo, they hand the ball off, and it looks like they're just going to hand it off again right on the goal line. No, little play action, defender bites, he finds Kirk wide open in the corner of the end zone. That was a play that lesser quarterbacks who are not as calm as him simply don't make. They don't handle that situation properly. They don't handle some of the other situations like the 2-minute drill just before halftime properly. And that is part of why the Texans have been able to continue to build even without their quarterback, is that they have exactly what you want in a backup quarterback. Somebody who can keep you afloat and guide you forward. He doesn't have to be a superstar. He doesn't have to be the one on the oars paddling for you. He's just got to direct you in the right way. And that's exactly what I think he's done so far. And it encourages me about the outlook for this team right now.
Yeah, I do like that you brought up that tempo play, by the way, because I want to shout out Nick Caley for something like that, because this very embattled offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, he's also had to have his learning moments and his learning curves, and they haven't been able to run the ball very well. And even after games where they look like Woody Marks is about to break out and really become like this dominant back, they're having to spell him out a lot too with Nick Chubb. And in that case, I thought that it was a really smart play call by the offensive coordinator to show almost the same exact look as the carry by Nick Chubb, but then move to the ball very, very quickly to freeze the defense, run a tempo play, and then it's actually a pass play. I think what's also good about this sort of adversity that this team is facing on offense with a steadiness in a capable backup, and like a really, 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 really floor-lifting defense, is that it does force the offensive coordinator to think about his own process differently and think about how he's setting up and sequencing plays specifically. A lot of the guys that come out of the McVay Shanahan tree, that's one of the things that you really learn, is how to sequence plays, how to put together play calls 1 and 2 to set up parts to a whole. Well, Nick Caley wasn't really calling plays ever other than the preseason with McVay, and the bulk of his experience comes from when he was in New England. And so you have to still learn those things as a play caller. You're not just going to be like ready out of the box. And he certainly showed that earlier this year in that very simple yet extremely thoughtful and well executed play at the goal line there, because they could not get the ball into the end zone previously. I thought that showed real growth for the entire unit, especially a team that knows how to execute in those very slim situational margins like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're showering him with so much praise for a well-called couple of plays, let's listen to it.
2 good plays.
Here's the snap from Andrews. Mills fakes the give, throws right side, caught, touchdown, Christian Kirk. The Texans score. They tie it up. They can take the lead with the extra point. Davis Mills TD pass to a wide open Aggie, Christian Kirk.
What is the formula of taking down a team that seems to be the favorite on the road, a team that has Super Bowl aspirations? Executing in spots like that. And, we've talked about him a little bit again, but since we're running through some bright spots in this game, let's give a shout out to Kalen Bullock. Why not? Let's go listen to his first interception in this game. It was a big spot.
Allen digs in. He's going to throw. Allen fires downfield and tipped and intercepted across the 40. Bullock, 30, 20, and escapes another tackle. Off to the right side, 15. Bullock to the 10. Bullock 5. End zone. Touchdown. Flag down on the play. Kale into the house. Is it going to come back or is it going to stand?
During the return, personal foul, illegal blindside block against the intercepting team, number 95. 15-yard penalty from the final foul. First down, Houston.
Picks it up, and that's too bad.
It is too bad. And Jourdan, you and I, we're always focusing on the positives. We're trying to lift people up, but I'm going to put it on your plate right now. Call out the man who was responsible for wiping out that highlight.
Oh, it could, and yeah, you saw it. It could have been a touchdown. It could have been, I think, the first pick 6 that actually was interception returned for a touchdown that Josh Allen has thrown. And I think they said on the broadcast over 3,000 passes, which is crazy. And someone please fact check me on that. I should definitely have that. But Derek Barnett, and I texted you. I said, freaking Derek Barnett, because you saw it. It was so blatant. It was right there. It wasn't even away from the play at all. The block in the back was so blatant. Derek Barnett got his moment back. He had a big sack and a hit on Josh Allen in crunch time, obviously late in the game. But we were texting the group and we were like, wow, we've got a really fun game. And then on the preview show, we had been talking about how I'm like, the Texans defense is going to score and they probably have to in order to win this game. And there it was, Nick. It was happening. And I was finally right about one thing in my life. And then Derek Barnett goes and hits the crap out of Dawson Knox and wipes it out.
So close to being Nostra Jordan. And instead, you just have to settle with almost accurate with your prediction. Yeah, it was. I tweeted about this late in the game. It's just, I'm so happy to see a player like Bullock get some shine on a national stage because he's such an instinctive player. And he also, another part of the formula of beating a favorite team that, comes into your place and is expected to win, winning the turnover margin. And the Texans won that 3-0 tonight because of the 2 interceptions by Bullock, but also because of the forced fumble by Bullock on a pass to Khalil Shakir that stopped the Buffalo drive dead in its tracks. So just a great performance, a complete performance all around by the defense. That leads to this victory. And the Texans 6-5, threatening. They're right there. They were entered tonight at the same, level record-wise as the Chiefs and the Ravens, and they keep winning right now. This is 3 straight victories for them. They got a big AFC South matchup coming up against the Colts in Week 13, 10 days from now. And then they play Kansas City, Arizona, the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Colts. It is not crazy to say that they could win 3 or more of those games and potentially finish with 9 or 10 wins and be right on the cusp of getting in the playoffs as perhaps the 6 or 7 seed. What a turnaround that would be for a team that seemed dead in the water just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and I think it speaks again to D'Amico Ryans and the culture that he's built. There's no quit in this team. This defense knows and believes that it is the most professional unit on the field in every game that it plays, and you saw that right out of the gate in these losses, regardless of what struggles the offense was having. They're going to start all of this and this crazy ride that will be the latter part of their season by watching this weekend Chiefs Colts. And I think they probably, you don't ever want to be rooting for any of your, AFC opponents, but I think they're got to be kind of rooting for the Chiefs in this one, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, if they really have aspirations of climbing back into the AFC South race, they need the Colts to lose, and then they need to beat them next week to get the little twofer and really get back into it. So you're right. You're absolutely right. And on the other side of the field with the Buffalo Bills, they dropped to, 7-4. And look, this is totally fine for them. I mean, they're not the team that we thought they might be. They're not the powerhouse team that we saw from previous years, but they're still right in the thick of it. The downside is that you are 2 games behind the Patriots. Yes, the Patriots in the AFC East in a climb that is becoming steeper and steeper with performances like this. I think my biggest concern with them is that you just don't know who you're going to get from week to week.
Yeah.
Whether it's a team that just gets outperformed on the road in Miami or a team that wins a shootout over Tampa Bay. I just don't know who they are right now. But on their side, the outlook for them going forward is they have Pittsburgh, which is going to be another test. It's in Pittsburgh, and they're going to have to play better than they did tonight. Pittsburgh doesn't own a defense as good as the Texans. Pretty much nobody does in the NFL. Then you get Cincinnati, you get the Patriots, big divisional game. You get the Browns, the Eagles, and the Jets. So there's still a path for them to, I think the next-gen probability of them making the playoffs was going to be like 87% if they lost tonight. So it's not a panic mode for them, but it is an example of a team that's just pretty inconsistent and continues to get banged up, had multiple injuries on the defensive side of the ball tonight that undoubtedly hurt them. So you're hoping that some of those guys can get healthy in time for them to make this stretch run. And most importantly, we do have to keep our eyes attuned to Josh Allen's stats because he got banged up tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he took a beating, and like we mentioned, he was shaking his hand out. You could tell it was bothering him. He had like some pretty gnarly turf burn on his arm at one point as well too that had to get wrapped up. You started to really feel for the Bills, and I think you have really all season because every game it's like multiple people that are exiting the game with injuries. Terrell Bernard, that was a really tough one to see. And then he was on the sideline with a sling. And the concussion tent line had a waiting line. The concussion tent had a waiting line because of how many, unfortunately, guys were having to get checked out and in and out of the the checkups, and the spotters were definitely on it for them tonight. And I just feel like and then you also, the play clock was not working. We need to mention this because otherwise, Nick, we are gonna get angry Bills fans in our comment sections. In the 2-minute warning at the end of the game, needing a touchdown and driving down the field down 4. The play clock goes out. That sucks. I mean, there's no part of me that will ever dwell in conspiratorial whatevers, but like that just flat out sucks that you can't see it on the screen. You have to do it mentally in your head, or you're doing it at least until 15 seconds with the coach in the headset before that cuts off. And then when it did come back on, it was the wrong play. It was the wrong count on the play clock. It was just very odd. I hope we get a pool report or something out of that tonight from those great local reporters on both sides for those beats. But yeah, the Bills could not catch a break. They certainly ran into an absolute hurricane, but they could not catch a break. Just when lucky bounces were not going their way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a weird night because at one point they tried to restart the play clock, but it seemed like it was starting at like 16. Josh Allen had to hurry a snap on one play thinking that the clock was accurate. It goes down again. They announced that they're tracking it on the field again. We really need a deep dive in what's the protocol here? Who decides to turn off the communications from coach to quarterback if there's no active play clock working? Because that happens upstairs in the booth. So there's a whole chain reaction that could happen when the play clock goes out. And then even I saw, and I don't know if this was a glitch with the broadcast or what, but after the play clock goes down, the game clock, at least on the score bug, is skipping seconds. It goes from 50 and then there's an extended pause and it's 48 and there's an extended pause and there's 46, and they ironed that out quickly. But some weird stuff. A referee got hurt tonight and got carted off. Just a weird, crazy night. But that is what Thursday Night Football provides us with. Craziness. And that's why the NFL is so popular, because people love to sit down and watch it all unfold. You know what wasn't weird? Doing this show with you.
The kids were in charge again.
Again. And you know what? I feel like now we're getting privileges. Now we can make the pizza rolls in the oven and we can use the microwave. Don't turn the stove on. We haven't gotten stove privileges yet, but we're getting there, Jordan. It was a great time with you doing this show tonight.
Yeah, this was a blast. We also got a fun game, which not all of these have been our very specific type of weird, crazy fun, Nick. So I'm glad that we got one of these good ones to talk about. If the broadcast does not sound excited, at least we are freaking jacked about this entire game tonight. And I always look forward to getting to do these shows with you. Greg kicks us out now when he has you on for the recap. So I appreciate that I got to speak with you today, Nick.
Well, he likes his one-on-one time, right?
He likes his one-on-one time.
We got 30 minutes of one-on-one time tonight, and the Texans got one more win in their ledger. Texans beat the Bills tonight again, 23-19. For Nick Shook, for Jourdan Rodrigue, I'm Nick Shook. We'll see you then.